Compound is a hardcore roguelike VR FPS, and one of the most unique games I've played in a long time. I've never played a roguelike FPS before, and I'm very happy that this is my first one. Compound is a very exciting game that I've sunk a ton of hours into, and today we're going to be going through the ins and outs of this game to figure out why it scratches that little part of my brain no other game has. Starting up Compound, you'll find yourself in this kind of apartment with an odd assortment of rooms. The first room is a kitchen and a trophy room. These trophies are actually really important. They're going to help you keep track of your progress and tell you how to unlock new, weapons, guns, all those kinds of things, but we'll get into that later. Weapons, guns? I just listed two of the same thing. You know what I'm talking about. There is food in this kitchen you can eat, but most of it doesn't do anything. The food on the table in the center, though, is actually how you're going to pick your difficulty. I play exclusively on easy because this game is hard, that's why. There's a lot of little interactive things you can do in this room, but none of it is really that important. I mean, this room is very important, but lore-wise, it doesn't matter. Now, in classic United States fashion, just left of the kitchen is an indoor shooting range. Here you have a wall of firearms to your disposal. Any guns you unlock throughout the game will show up here and you can test fire them or learn how to reload them, whatever. This is a room you might not spend a whole lot of time in, but it's super helpful for when you get a new weapon and you want to learn how to use it. There's also a computer here that gives you a really nice tutorial of kind of how everything works, something I missed for the first 10 hours of my playthrough. I mean, I guess I didn't really miss it. Dude, I saw words, I'm not reading. On the opposite side of the kitchen is this kind of hallway-like room with a bunch of weird stuff in it. There's an elevator, vending machine, and just an open shower. This vending machine is incredibly useful. It's what you use to select modifiers for your runs, but we'll get into that later. What we'll go over now is this little room off to the left. When you start the game, this comes boarded up, but after your first or second run, I don't really remember, it'll open up. And inside is this training grounds where you can spawn in any enemies and practice with whatever weapons you have unlocked. I'll be honest with you, I never spent a whole lot of time down here. It's really cool and tons of fun, but I just never needed to, you know what I'm saying? And I'm going through all this stuff pretty quickly because it doesn't really mean a lot to the game. These rooms act as more like the lobby than anything else, so I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it. The real fun of this game happens when you turn your attention to the elevator. This is where you enter the dungeon and where the gameplay starts. Your objective for this game is to collect weapons, clear out all the enemies in each stage, and kill the boss at the very end. Simple, right? But obviously, it's hardcore. If you die, you restart entirely. There's no checkpoints, no second lives, nothing. I'll be real with you guys, I don't really know why I call this a dungeon. I guess it's really just for lack of a better word. This game is more presented as a skyrise research facility. I mean, you start in the sewers and you end on a rooftop with a helipad, and most dungeons are underground, so it doesn't really fit the criteria. But evil capitalistic biomechanics research skyscraper doesn't really roll off the tongue the same. That's where you are, by the way. That's you're there. And one last thing before we start, it's important to go over the fundamentals of how this game plays before we kind of get into the specifics. On each run, you're only allowed to carry 2 weapons at a time, and you can switch them out by clicking B on your controller. You can also change out these weapons by just picking up new ones. Enemies you kill can occasionally drop ammo for the guns that you have. They can also drop food, which will restore a part of your health. And just to sidetrack for a second, whenever you eat food, it just makes the most vile sound ever. Sometimes, bro, I don't even want to heal because of that. It's just, I can't take it sometimes. They can also draw this ball of glowing ammo, which will give you free reloads for a limited amount of time. Or these blue helmets, which kind of just act as a shield. There's a lot to go over and a lot to remember, but thankfully, you don't have to. If you turn over your left hand and look at the back of your wrists, a nice little map will show up for you. On the left, you can see how much health and ammo you have, and on the right, there's a map, and the blue squares tell you where you've been. There's also a white arrow showing where you are and the way you're facing, white circles to show where a weapon is spawned, solid colored circles to show where ammo's been dropped, burgers to show food, an E to show the exit, and red circles to show where unique enemies are. There's no key for this anywhere, but you learn it pretty quick, it's not too hard. You can also access the game settings from here, just click the menu button. And this is a whole bunch of mumbo jumbo I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on. If you want more in-depth explanations, just go to the computer in the gun range. And if this is your first time hearing about this game, and it's all complicated and all that, don't worry, it makes so much more sense as we move along. Starting with the different stages. There are 8 stages in this dungeon, each with 2 floors except for the last. The first stage is really there just for you to learn the layout, and it usually has a weapon for you to pick up. It's good for learning where enemies commonly spawn and what weapons might be good for each stage. But when you get to floor 2, that's where the difficulty spikes. Enemies will spawn here with no new weapons to pick up, and each stage has their own unique enemy that will spawn on the second floor. Each stage does follow this kind of pattern, but they're all different enough where it doesn't really become stale. Starting out on stage 1 is the sewers. This stage is full of sludge and grime, and is actually the only stage with explosive barrels. If you get lucky, these can sometimes clear out entire rooms of it, but most of the time they're only going to take out 1 or 2. I mean, if you've played any video game ever, you know what these do, so I'm not going to spend time going over it. This stage is obviously the easiest, only spawning plasma guards and plasma drones, both of which have low fire rates and low HP. On harder difficulties, you might come across the SMG guard, these like purple guys, but they're not too hard to deal with. They do have a really high rate of fire, but they deal like 0 damage and have pretty low health. And on this stage, you'll usually get the jump on them, so you can kill them before they even start shooting most of the time. I will say this though, the second floor of the sewers has one of the hardest unique enemies in the entire game. The giant rat. Whenever you enter a room with this little guy, a massive red, like, warning symbol will show up on your screen letting you know this guy's coming. And this is actually the only enemy in the game that can open doors, so no matter where you are on the map, this guy's gonna be following you. And when you come face to face with this guy, in classic New York fashion, he will start spitting goo at you. The rat is honestly a really simple, like, enemy to deal with. What really makes the fight hard is that you're just underprepared for it every time. Yeah, you might have gotten a weapon on the floor prior, but you definitely didn't have enough time to rack up enough ammo to kill this guy. So you'll pretty much always have to fall back on the default weapons you get at the beginning of your run. And the rat has a lot of health, so your low damage pistol is not going to really be that effective. And you do have to kill it. If you don't, you can't progress. On paper, this sounds really unfair, like one of the hardest enemies in the first stage. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But it'll only show up like half the time on medium mode and then every time on hard mode. But if you play on easy, you can just skip him entirely. He'll never show up. And if you're good enough to be playing on medium or hard, you're good enough to fight the rat. So it does balance out. This is really just the only unique enemy that's going to give you a run for your money every single time. The second stage is reception and sales. This stage features large rooms and a much cleaner aesthetic. It's got nice plants and fountains everywhere, some magazines for you to read, and a lot of posters promoting this kind of vaccine we don't know much about.
Bro, what?
This stage introduces the last of the 3 guard enemies, the shotgun guard. Pretty self-explanatory. And these 3 will show up on every stage from now on. They're pretty simple, just like easy copy-paste enemies to kind of put around. This stage also has the tank, like this little robot guy. It acts similarly to the plasma guard, but it just shoots faster and has more health. And like the guards, will show up on every stage from now on. The unique enemy for this stage is the Kami robot, or Kami, one of the two, I don't know. These little crabs also show up on every stage from now on, but are far less common. They are also probably my least favorite enemy. 1, they make the most annoying sound in the game. It's kind of cute, like the first 2 or 3 times, but they just do not shut up. And 2, not only do they have a shield and a decent amount of health, but they're tiny as hell. It takes like 5 minutes to kill one of these guys. And the whole time they're just making that stupid sound. And 3, they jump at you, which is scary. This stage, like the sewers, has some explosives you can shoot, but this time in the form of cleaning robots. They kind of just wander around until you or an enemy shoots them, and then they explode. I think this is really neat. I've never seen a moving, exploding barrel in a video game before, and I think it kind of just adds to the randomness of it all, which, you know, it's pretty cool. Good feature, game of the year. Our third stage is Vaccine Warehouse. There aren't any like syringes or anything you can play with here, just a bunch of empty boxes, and obviously more questionable language. This stage introduces a multitude of enemies. The kamikaze robot, the 2 stalkers, and obviously the unique enemy. The kamikaze drone is this green drone that will fly towards you, spin, and then explode. You can also trigger its explosion by shooting it. It takes 1 to 2 shots depending on the weapon you use. Although their explosion radius is pretty big, so sometimes it's not super worth it. A lot of the time it's better to just let it catch up and detonate by itself. As long as you continue to move away from it once it starts spinning, you're gonna be fine. What sets them apart is that every time you run into them, they're gonna push you back. In this game, being able to peek around corners and like go in and out of cover super easily is essential to your success. If you get pushed back off that corner, a lot of the time you're gonna have to wait for enemies to come around, and that can oftentimes leave you out in the open. Moving on to the stalkers, there are 2 kinds, just stalker and the rail stalker. I don't really know why they're called stalkers. They don't follow you around, at least not like the rat does. They're pretty much just upgraded tanks. The blue one more so, it does the same thing, it just has double the fire rate and double the HP. The orange one instead has a railgun, and will lock onto you, dealing hit scan damage after a certain amount of time. The fire rate on this guy is super low, and you can disengage the laser by obstructing its view or killing it. This is one of the few enemies that really forces you to continuously go in and out of cover, especially early game when your weapons don't do as much damage. The stalkers really aren't that big a deal on their own, or even coupled with a couple enemies. It's just like later in the game when they start spawning in mass, they become a problem. This stage's explosive item are these like little tripwires that spawn around. Honestly, these are super lame. I have never fallen for one of these, and 90% of the time they're just in the way. On occasion, you can lure some kind of enemy to walk into it, but even then, it'll only ever kill one enemy. And drones and tanks can go right past it. It was a good idea, just poorly implemented. And finally, this stage's unique enemy is Booster Bruce. He's really rad. This guy comes equipped with a jetpack and an SMG. This enemy isn't as hard to defeat as he is scary. Up until now, everything you fought has been at eye level or below, so having to look up to fight this enemy is more of a shock than you would think. This isn't something where you can like turn the corner and see him floating there and like get the drop on him. Like he's gonna rush you every time. I love him though. 10 out of 10 would smash again. Our fourth stage is Profit Management, which takes place in these small office rooms with densely packed enemies. This stage is all about maximizing profits, and I would assume the people working here are trying to sell this vaccine we've heard so much about. This stage only introduces one new enemy, the SMG drone, and like its counterpart, the SMG guard, it also has a high fire rate but with low health. Only this time it's gonna fly towards you. They're fairly common from here on out, but if you're good enough to run into one, you're good enough to get around them too. This stage also has a unique enemy, the Accountant. He wields an SMG and hides behind a big shield. This shield though accounts for 99% of this guy's health. Literally one round from any weapon will kill him. All you have to do is get past his shield. He doesn't pose too much of a threat as long as you're prepared for him, and he shows up on all difficulties, so you'll get used to it pretty quick. This stage is also dedicated to following OSHA guidelines, and has fire extinguishers on almost every doorway. If you or an enemy shoots one of these, a big cloud of smoke will fly out. I think these are here to give the player some sort of cover in these small rooms, but enemies can see you right through it and will still walk towards you, just not shoot. And I still can't see the enemy, so a lot of the time it acts more as a debuff than any kind of help. The fifth stage is a shocking comparison to Profit Management. Chemical processing seems to be where this vaccine is being made. These large rooms, computer panels, and pipes full of ooze definitely seem to suggest so. The main challenge in this stage is really just the scale. Turning a corner, you'll find enemies on the other side of these massive rooms, and trying to hit shots from so far away is really hard. The security here is pretty high as well. From here on out, all the guard enemies have a chance to spawn in their elite form. There's not a whole lot to go over, it's just more health and higher fire rate, but the difficulty spike is definitely there. This stage also introduces its unique enemy, the Spider Tank, and this guy will shoot slow-moving projectiles at you that will explode on impact. And these things deal a lot of damage, so be careful. And on harder difficulties, the Spider Tank can also spawn with like a machine gun on its head, so be wary of that as well. Its main weakness is obviously its size. It's super easy to hit, but it has a lot of HP to counteract that, taking 3 rockets to the face. On easy. The sixth stage is Research and Development. This is where I assume they test their vaccine, and there's a lot of evidence saying that it's not really going too great. Scattered around the map are these big tubes full of zombies. Now, whoever's running this research facility could either be using the zombies to test the vaccine, or this could be the result of the vaccine. Whoever's exposed to it might end up in a tube full of goop. There is no question though when it comes to how annoying these guys are. You or the enemies could shatter the glass of these tubes and release the zombie. This glass is also super easy to break, so any kind of like AoE or explosive weapon is just not a good idea. Also, if you're standing in front of them and an enemy's shooting at you, you can either tank the damage or dodge it and have it shatter the glass behind you, releasing a zombie. And when these zombies do come out, they will run towards you, tanking a ton of damage. They can only deal melee damage, and keeping your distance isn't too hard, but they will definitely push you out of the spot you're holding. And as always, that could land you in a tricky spot. As much as I hate these guys, I think they're fantastic enemies. This unique mechanic really forces you to be aware of everything in the game. Where you're shooting, what guns you're using, what enemies you're fighting, and where you are, all start to play a much bigger role in this stage. I think it's really cool because the playstyle in this stage alone is very different from the rest of the game, but not a whole lot has changed. Other than that, this stage doesn't really have a whole lot to introduce, other than its unique enemy, Dr. Amoral. You get it? Like amoral, like illegally testing vaccines on people. Whatever. This guy acts pretty much the same as the rat, running towards you and shooting ooze out of his hose, but this time without the tracking ability. On harder difficulties though, he'll shoot out these smoke bombs that can deal damage to you. Our seventh stage is Executive Power, and this kind of seems to be like the office of whoever's running this whole vaccine fiasco. It features a lot of fancy decor and these paintings of very important looking people. There are very few doors on this stage separating rooms, so that means as soon as you open one of them, pretty much the entire map will start flooding through this one doorway. And this stage has more enemies than any other. Literal piles of bodies are going to start building up in this map. You do still need to explore the map though, because scattered around are these little security cameras that will pan left to right and shoot at you once you're spotted. These guys, like Booster Bruce, are primarily difficult because of their location. They're up high, once again forcing you to look up instead of dead ahead like normal. Executive Power also has the hardest unique enemy, the Gold Leader. This is the most dynamic enemy in the game. First thing of note is its shield. It has this odd cutout so that it only exposes its head, and he can crouch behind it taking total cover. I could be wrong about this, but I think his shield is also indestructible. It's different than all the other shields we've seen, being more of like this gold color. I also just couldn't survive long enough to break it. The Gold Leader has 2 weapons, his shotgun and a railgun. It is incredibly difficult to beat this guy. I couldn't even do it in the training area. You are going to struggle on this stage. The difficulty increase here is insane, but if you can manage to get through it, it all pays off with the coolest environment in the game. Stage 8 is the end, kind of. Highworth Individual takes place on the rooftop of this skyscraper, and immediately you're going to be introduced to this game's boss, the CEO. A massive helicopter that flies around you equipped with 2 machine guns, smoke grenades, and a megaphone.
User, ammonia levels on your body indicate you are participating in public urination.
There's a lot of stuff in this map to like weave around and hide behind, but because the main enemy you're fighting is above you, it doesn't serve a whole lot of purpose. But it does force you to stay mobile while playing. And after 7 stages of primarily stationary firing, this can sometimes end up being a big change. The CEO can book it too, he moves quick. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that he's really hard to hit despite being such a big enemy. Also scattered around this map are these red receptacles that will dispense ammo for you, but as far as I can tell there's no real way to gain health on this stage. The CEO can also spawn some guards to help himself out, usually not very many, but they will sneak up on you and rock your shit if you're not careful. The CEO primarily works in a cycle. First he'll shoot at you with his machine guns, then he'll drop smoke bombs and spawn some enemies before going back to the machine guns. This will continue until you deal enough damage to the CEO to cause his helicopter to crash and explode. I did kind of miss it the one time I beat him, but afterwards you could see the remnants everywhere, so I think it's a safe guess. After beating the CEO, challenge mode will be unlocked, and a green arrow will lead you into a room where you can either pick to end your run or loop back to the sewers. If you loop like I did, you'll keep everything you had, but the difficulty will increase. As far as I can tell, that's the only thing that changes. I'm not sure what happens if you loop all the way back to Highworth Individual, because, well, I died. But yeah, that's it. That's the general layout and gameplay of Compound. Pretty much that's what's set in stone. That's the stuff that never changes. But what about the things that do change? The weapons and mutators that can make or break your run. There's a really good variety of weapons in this game. There's a lot of more like conventional weapons, but there's also a lot of really unique ones. At first, only a handful of the weapons are unlocked, but you can figure out how to get more by picking up the trophies in the kitchen. I'm not going to go over how to unlock the weapons because you'll get most of them just by playing the game. There are 5 categories of guns in this game, and you start out with 1 from each. Blue weapons are like your starter weapons. There's only 3 and they're all pretty different, but what brings them together is that they all spawn in the emergency firearm little thingamajig, I don't know what it's called. I don't really know what's going on with the purple weapons. They don't really share a whole lot of similarities, but the wiki calls them police weapons, so I guess that's what we're gonna call them. Red weapons are like your shotgun kind of stuff. I don't really know how to explain it. It's like the spread out, like AoE kind of, you know what I'm talking about. Orange weapons are like the low fire rate, high damage kind of stuff. And then green are your explosive weapons. No category spawns more commonly than the others, and of course each color supports its own playstyle. And because you don't really get to pick what spawns in the dungeon, it kind of forces you to try everything out. And now we're going to go through each of the weapons and talk about what they do and what they're useful for. I won't bore you though, all the blue ones, the starter pistols are like your starter pistols, you know? Nothing too interesting, except for being one of the best guns in the entire game. The plasma pistol, along with the other 2 blue weapons, have unlimited ammo, just like a cooldown kind of thing. But this one, the one you start out with, is by far the best. The laser and blast pistols both cap out at 3 rounds before you have to go through the cooldown cycle, where the plasma pistol has about 6, I didn't count. Either way, it doesn't matter, because it only ever needs to cool down if you shoot too fast. So if you can figure out the timing and space out your shots accordingly, you never have to worry about going through that cooldown cycle. The laser and blast pistol do deal more damage, but not by a lot. And honestly, the quality difference between them is crazy. Like, the plasma pistol is a straight S tier weapon, it's one of the best in the game. The blast and laser are F, dude, they're so bad. The blast pistol is like a tiny shotgun kind of thing, but it's only got 3 rounds and the worst range imaginable. With how close you have to get to enemies while using this gun, you might as well just be giving them a hug or something, man. The cooldown on the blast pistol is shorter though, so it's not all too bad. But oh my goodness, dude, do not even get me started on the laser pistol. Just for reference, every time like one of these blue lines lights up, you get 1 round back, or like a charge, whatever. Look how long it takes for you to get 3. I rest my case. Moving on to the purple weapons, we have 3 of them. Starting out, we have this small SMG. It's the same gun that the purple guards have. You start the game with this weapon unlocked, and it's very simple, easy to use. There's really not a whole lot to go over here. Next on the list is the revolver. And this weapon plays very similarly to the plasma pistol, but it just does so much more damage. If you can get good at landing headshots, this weapon will carry you right to the top. And you can reload it the funny way, like in the movies. The last weapon is the assault rifle, and this one's just really versatile. It's got good ammo capacity, good fire rate, good damage. It's kind of like the jack of all trades, you know? It's one of those weapons you just always pick up because it's good in every situation. And this is actually one of the weapons I used to beat the game, the one time I did. Red weapons are your scattering weapons. That's a good way to put it. First up, obviously, double barrel shotgun. The same kind of shotgun you find in every other game. And this is actually my favorite gun in Compound. I think it's just because I like shotguns though. Compound also introduces this really cool twist on the shotgun called the bouncer shotgun. It's pretty self-explanatory. Every time you shoot, your rounds will kind of bounce around for a little bit. The playstyle this weapon supports though is amazing. It's so much fun. Although it is the most dangerous weapon in the game. Not only for enemies, but for you too. I can't say how many corners I've just randomly sent rounds down, killing a bunch of enemies without even looking at them. I also can't say how many times I run into a room in profit management and killed myself because there's a bunch of bullets bouncing around off the walls. You can get really creative with this weapon. I mean, I've bounced it off ceilings, floors, walls, anything really. This is one of the most fun guns to play with for sure. The last red weapon is the dart gun. If you like not aiming with your weapons, this is for you. Like weapons you'll see later, this gun has a homing ability. A really, really good one. And this ability alone puts it in the top 3 weapons of all time. The only downside to this weapon is its ammo capacity, only carrying 6 rounds. And its below than average damage means you'll be reloading and running out of ammo pretty frequently. But again, I cannot understate how good the homing ability is. Now moving on to the orange weapons, we start out with the railgun. This is kind of like the game's sniper rifle, and in my opinion, it's really not too helpful. There's not a whole lot of situations where you really need a sniper rifle. Maybe when you're fighting the CEO, but even then it's going to be hard to drag a weapon with only a 4-round magazine through 7 stages. It does have like a piercing ability, so you can kill several enemies with 1 round, but especially on stages with like big rooms, it really doesn't come that much in handy. There's also this like laser rifle that I just do not like at all. The sight on it is just horrible. It tears through ammo, and it's a burst weapon. I've never been a big fan of burst weapons though. I mean, just let me shoot at my own pace, you know what I'm saying? And this weapon would have been fine. It would have been okay if I just didn't need to charge it up. It is such an inconvenience. You end up pre-firing everything like you're in Siege. Before you turn any corner, you have to charge it up and then blindly swing out and just hope you hit something. And oh no, you missed an enemy? Well, good luck dodging its attacks for 3 seconds while you reload and wait for it to charge up again. Honestly, it just makes me mad, and I don't even use it, right? But thankfully, the last orange weapon is actually super cool. The Sonic Pulse Generator is one of the coolest weapons I've seen in any game. This weapon uses, I guess, sonic charges to deflect enemies' bullets. And because obviously it's very hard to aim like this, anything you reflect immediately turns into homing rounds. This weapon pretty much just turns Compound into a rhythm game. As long as you have good timing, you are going to crush it with this gun. I don't have a whole lot of footage of it though because it's a pretty rare gun. And now finally we can move on to the green weapons, the explosives. You start the game with this little grenade launcher unlocked. This is really simple, easy to use, you know? You just put a grenade in there, shoot it, after a couple seconds it explodes. Although I will say the damage on this thing is surprisingly low. It's got pretty good AoE though, so it's really good for like prepping rooms. You can lower the health of pretty much every enemy in like a medium to small sized room with just 1 or 2 rounds. The better version of this obviously is the rocket launcher. More damage, more AoE, all that. But really what makes it such an upgrade is its homing ability. This makes it the best weapon to fight the CEO with. You can see it in my run. I kind of just like shoot the rocket launcher and look away because I know for a fact it's going to hit him and it's going to deal a ton of damage. It's also super helpful for fighting unique enemies with a ton of health. When I say the rocket launcher is the best weapon in the game, I mean it. It is insane how good this thing is. There's also this really unique like sticky grenade launcher that I've got mixed feelings on. I think it's just because I'm bad at the game, but I could not find an effective way to use this thing. This weapon shoots out 3 grenades that'll stick to like walls or enemies and explode. The only problem is that it only explodes when all 3 grenades have been fired. It's really good for dealing a ton of damage to like one unique enemy or something, but otherwise it's like pretty bad. If you're fighting one enemy, it's just a waste of ammo. And not having that constant damage stream like every other weapon really doesn't work out a lot. I'm sure there's a good way to use this weapon, I'm just not creative enough. But yeah, that pretty much sums up all the weapons. If you want to know more information, like how to reload them or like any of the specifics, you can just look at the computer in the shooting range, it'll let you know. But for now, we're going to move on to the mutators. Running through the same set of rooms using the same set of weapons and the same set of tactics can become very boring very quickly. This is a problem all hardcore roguelikes have to solve, and the way Compound tackles this problem is by introducing narcotics. In the vending machine just outside the elevator, you can take your pick in one of its many syringes to change up how you play your run, all for free. If you hover your finger over each mutator, you can kind of get a rundown of what each of them do, but we'll go over them anyway. Starting at the top, we have Old Schooler. This mutator changes the most out of any of them. I assume y'all can read, so I'm not really going to go over it, but this mutator is really here so you can play the game like Doom. I only use this mutator for fun, right? I get zero tactical advantage out of this whatsoever. I don't think I've ever actually gotten past Vaccine Warehouse with this mutator. I just like running around super fast with my shotgun mowing down enemies. Next up though is the Compound Bow. This mutator is super simple, it doesn't really change a whole lot, it just replaces all the weapons in the game with this Compound Bow. The Compound Bow is pretty good too, it's got infinite ammo and deals a shit ton of damage. Using this mutator does require some skill though. You really have to be able to shoot quickly and accurately to make this thing work out. You do have this laser at the bottom though, which really helps out a lot. And yes, I know I hold it the cringe anime way, but it is genuinely so much easier to see everything like this. Really, I just like this mutator for like the 3 times I ever tried hard mode. It's really nice to know that right off the bat, I'm gonna get a pretty good all-around weapon. And so I don't have to rely on RNG to like maybe get past the sewers. I can't imagine fighting the CEO with it, it must be a pain in the ass. Next on the list is the Extra Arms modifier, and this mutator literally gives you a 3rd arm to help you pick up items and reload. It says that the reload is slower than manually reloading, but only by like 2 seconds. And it's not slower than any other video game you've played, so it's really not that big a deal. And this mutator doesn't really sound like too much special, like not a whole lot's going on, but it is like 100% the best one to play with. Yeah, it helps you reload and pick up items, but it's got this hidden feature of really just letting you focus. You don't have to worry about ammo at all while using this mutator. I can focus on anything else because I know that I'm gonna get more ammo in my gun, I just have to wait 2 seconds. I don't even have to worry about running out because I just got like a vacuum strapped to my back sucking up that shit. This is the mutator I use the most, it's what I've performed the best with. And after Extra Arms is Damage Amplifier. This mutator is really simple, it just gives everything in the game 1 HP, including you. This mutator is really good for killing unique enemies, right? It's just 1 shot and they're done. Easy. Other than that though, I'm really not a fan of this one. It just forces you to be perfect. I know there's a lot of people that really like this like high risk gameplay, but it's just not for me. It's also really hard, and I can't do it. The last one on the list is People Populator. This mutator just about doubles all the enemies on the map, but lowers their HP. I think this is really just here to make the game harder, you don't really get any buffs from it. But if we circle back to the trophies, a big part of beating the game is getting 200 kills with every weapon. And if you're grinding specifically just for kills, this mutator is super helpful. Who cares if you only make it to profit management if you get 100 kills along the way? But, I mean, other than that, I never really used it. The last mutator on our list is the Chaos Mutator. This one takes the randomness of roguelikes and cranks it all the way up. With this mutator, every time you enter the elevator, you'll start in a random stage with a random set of weapons. This is really good for people who just want to run a few rooms but don't want to worry about what weapons they should keep or trade out, etc. And I think because it's more random, it feels a lot more casual, which I like a lot. I'm not really sure what beating the game looks like with this mutator. I was never able to get far enough. And that's all of them. That's actually the entire game. We went through all of it. Or most of it. People who are familiar with the game probably have noticed that I've skipped over a couple things. More specifically, the missing mutator, alternate endings, and how the hell I unlocked half the stuff I have. Now, I'm a man of honesty, so I'll keep it real with you. I cheated. That's how I was able to get the dart gun and beat the game 2 extra times to get the Chaos Mutator. And how I got into contact with the Gold Leader. To get the missing mutator that I don't have, I'd have to beat the game on Damage Amplifier. And trust me, I tried. I went on the wiki to like look it up and it's just blank. I have no idea what's going on over there. Really, what I'm trying to say is if I took my time to unlock all these things, this video wouldn't have come out until like 4 months from now. And I didn't want to make you wait that long. Plus, my new headset's coming soon and I wanted to make a video on that, so I just thought it would be better if I got the video out now. To be honest though, I don't think it really matters too much. Because even though I haven't experienced 100% of the game, I still feel like I can have an opinion on it. And if I'm loving it this much only 20 hours into the game, I doubt that's going to change when I finally beat it. I'm certainly not done playing Compound yet though, and I'm 100% gonna beat the game, just not in time for this video to come out. And hey, if this video does well, maybe I can make a part 2 when I 100% Compound, and I can show you the big ass machine gun sitting in the corner. This is a game I recommend everybody check out. Everything about it is super unique and well thought out. The gameplay is refreshing and one of the best VR games I've played it to date. This video took a long time to make, but it was the most fun I've had making videos so far. If you guys like this kind of stuff, leave a like and I'll make more. It was super fun. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Dude, I got this new mic, bro. This shit is crazy. It's Bluetooth. Can you see that?